All right, welcome to another episode of Catholic Founders. This is not any regular episode. This is a recap episode. I have hit 25 episodes as of last week with Tim Connors. Cue the applause. And it is late at night, but I'm trying to get this out as quickly as I can. I decided to listen back to all 25 episodes that we put out so far and basically draw out my core lessons from each episode. I was going to originally just do one lesson per episode, but as I was listening, I realized there are just way too many nuggets. The people that have been on the show have shared so many amazing things that there were too many to fit into just one per episode. So we're going to have a few. Some of them have more than others, but we're going to try to do this as concisely as possible, but while also being impactful. So I'm going to try to just kind of reflect on these core things that to me were really valuable, and I hope that you find it valuable as well. If you're somebody who's new to the show, this is a really good opportunity to hear who our past guests were, and you get a little bit of a taste for what was discussed in those episodes. Again, this is by no means a full recap of each episode, just kind of core lessons that I personally took away from those conversations. So, again, if any of these stick out to you, go back and listen to the full episode. You will really enjoy it. And by the way, I am going to try to do this in one episode, but there is a chance that this gets just absolutely too long and it becomes part two. So I guess you'll know that by the time you're listening. All right. So let's go back in time, the Wayback Machine. All right. Episode number 1 with Alessandro DeSanto, the co-founder of Hallow. This first episode was actually basically a part 1 of the episode I did with Alessandro. And we talked primarily in this episode is very focused on prayer in the life of an entrepreneur. And the biggest takeaway I had from this one is that prayer is the first step to a successful life of entrepreneurship. As you need to hear from God about the specific good that you're meant to pursue, if you want to learn that, you have to pray. He will speak to you sometimes in louder voices than others, but if you're willing to take aside the time to pray and to hear him in the silence, you will find what God is calling you to. Again, it's sometimes not super clear, but he will guide you to it. You just have to be persistent and come to it. Episode number 2. This was just a mini episode on the parable about the parables being explained to the apostles, and I found this interesting because the exegesis points out that Jesus only explained the parables to true disciples, meaning the regular people were getting parables; they weren't getting the explanation of the parables. We have them partially now because we're not there. We have the explanation in the Bible, but he explained what the parables meant to his disciples. So in other words, if we want to understand what Jesus truly means and what the gospel truly means to us, we have to become disciples first. We have to believe first effectively. We can't just expect to know everything and then let that lead to our conversion or our deepening of faith, right? That was episode number 2. Episode 3. This was Alessandro DeSanto again, and this one was talking more so about some of the founding journey of Hallow, but a lot of new things that were not necessarily discussed in the other podcast appearances that he's done, at least not at the time. So for me, the biggest one from this one was that, again, unless you make time for silence, you will never be able to find the whispers that God has for you. He comes to us in a still voice sometimes, and you cannot get that if you are not making time for silence. And as entrepreneurs, we are really busy. We have so many excuses to not pray, to not make time for that silence, but it is definitely worth making the time for the silence if you want to hear what God's calling you to. Again, the whole principle here is: are we trying to be entrepreneurs that are pursuing our own ends, or are we trying to be entrepreneurs that are providing for our families, but basically we want to do what God has planned for us, to be instruments of His will. Can't really do that unless you're listening. Make time for the silence, even if it's just 15 or 20 minutes in the mornings. Do it. It's going to be worth it. Episode number 4 was with Sonder Rash. He is a YC founder based in San Francisco and building, I think it's called Safety Wing, if I remember correctly, the company name. Really interesting individual. This is a much longer episode. It's like an hour and a half. Core things from this one. Again, he's such a wise person and very, very thoughtful, but I picked 2 items. Ambition is good or bad depending on the intention behind it. So why are you being ambitious? What are you being ambitious for? We always talk about on the show whether or not ambition is a good thing. And I think this gives a really solid answer that if your ambition is, I'm trying to achieve something in order to do X for God, then it's good. Obviously, you need to make sure that's a pure intention, but it all comes down to the intentions behind why you're doing what you're doing. So really examine that. If you're a very ambitious person, examine why you're being ambitious. And if you're somebody who's not very ambitious because you're worried about being, I don't know exactly, but you're worried about falling into this kind of greed or something like that, maybe you also have the wrong perspective. Maybe you ought to be a bit more ambitious for God because, he gave you skills and talents and he can accomplish a lot through you if you let him, right? If you let him, because he never forces us. The second one is we can be techno optimists as long as we recognize the boundaries where the faith tells us that things need to kind of be demarcated. So the faith gives us so many interesting things, especially in the age of AI, around what is correct, what is good with bioethics, with treatment of employees, making sure that the worker is put at the center of your focus, that the worker has dignity. If we follow those things, we're in a position where we can be techno optimists. And this again speaks probably more to a tech crowd, people who are really interested in the Silicon Valley culture, but people who love technology like myself, we have to balance this. There's I'll reference this now. There was an episode of New Polity not too long ago. I think I referenced it in one of the Saintly CEO newsletters that said the church basically condemned a certain type of technology, right? So not all technology is good. The technology they were condemning was contraception. So, we know that not all technology is good. And the church can say that. So it's like we can pursue new technology. It's good. We should be doing this, but we can't just assume that everything that's new is good, right? So that was a really fascinating one for me. Episode number 5 with Trevor Alcorn. Trevor runs, or is co-founder basically, of Tridentine Brewing, basically a Catholic beer company. Who wouldn't like listening to that one? It's very interesting because they're effectively running a family business, him and his brothers and his dad. So if you're not familiar with them, I would definitely check him out on Twitter. He's got a great Twitter follow. And the core things I took away from that episode were living below your means allows you to afford to take risks and try to start businesses. We talked specifically about how many people are saying like, oh, it's too much risk to start a business. Especially a lot of, Catholic men are maybe too risk averse, if you will. But if you are living well and living below your means, you'll have more opportunities to do so. You have more opportunities to answer the calling that God has for you. Perhaps you feel some sort of calling to start a business. Again, if you're keeping your rent low, driving a beater around, or at least not driving some kind of big sports car, maybe you have that opportunity. So this is something I think we should all take to heart because it's very easy to just feel like, hey, I'm not living like lavish because the examples that we see of lavish are very, very lavish. So it feels easy to make, I don't know, not excuse, but to justify why we're living the way we are. But if we really ask ourselves, do we need all the things we have? And how many of these things are we actually pretty attached to? And do we need to remove that attachment from? It could be, pretty revealing. And I would encourage people to do this because, again, remember who you're surrounded by, the neighborhoods you live in and everything. That's going to start to dictate what you think is the baseline. Growing up, we didn't have vacations. And now I hear a lot of people talking about how vacations kind of like, something that you need to do every year. I was like, well, I have the ability to go on vacation now. But growing up, I didn't. And was it fine? Yeah, it was fine. I don't think it was a big deal, honestly. So just really assess your expectations of life, if you will, or what you need as the baseline, because it might allow you to be more free to do God's will later on. The next one is grow at God's pace and don't worry and don't try to force growth even when there's clear demand. So for these guys, they have a lot of people who want their beer all over the country, but they have to comply with regulations and they want to do things legally. So doing their expansion takes time. They have to go from one state to the next. If I'm not mistaken, they're still only in Wisconsin at the time of this recording. They might have expanded to one more state. But getting liquor, selling liquor or alcohol in each state is very difficult. So it was just a really interesting way to look at. We shouldn't try to force things. Sometimes it's better to go slow if we need to. There's a lot of really good other lessons in that show, though, about family and dealing with family when it comes to business. I would, again, really recommend checking it out. This episode of Catholic Founders is sponsored by Fio, the streaming platform built for Catholic creators and audiences. Think Spotify, but exclusively with Catholic content. And you know what caught my attention about Fio is it's not just another streaming service. They're actually solving how Catholic business owners reach engaged, faithful Catholic audiences who are actively seeking content that's aligned with their beliefs. And right now they've got a very special offer. They're offering free advertising space for Catholic entrepreneurs. No risk and no commitment. This is your chance to reach Catholics that you cannot find anywhere else. Just head to fio.fm/ads. That's fio.fm/ads to sign up for this free advertising opportunity. The Fio app is available on iOS and Android, with web coming soon. All right, back to the show. All right. Episode number 6 with Colin Stroud from Go Somewhere. You probably have seen him around on LinkedIn. At this point, a lot of people have. He is basically a credit cards points hacker. And since we had him on the show, he's even blown up even more. But I had him on at roughly 1 year, 1.5-ish years of him. It's about a year of him really kind of leaning into the credit cards points business and consulting on LinkedIn. And I wanted to be able to catch him at that time because I knew for a fact that he was going to continue to grow, which he has. And I thought it would be a good opportunity for him to look back and for other people to kind of get a sneak peek of how his life was. That episode, by the way, again, is a severely underrated episode from what we've done. That's one that I personally am probably going to go back and listen to even again. It's really, really good. 3 things I took away from that one. If you follow your passion, God sometimes leads you to your calling for business. He did not necessarily start or plan to start a credit cards consulting business. It was kind of born out of a need he was trying to, get some kind of vacation for his family. We talked about vacation before. And he felt that what I have available is not good, but he learned about a couple tips about credit cards, and then because he did some kind of points obtained some bonuses, he was able to take his family on a really nice trip to Europe, even though he was not making a lot of money at the time. And that just began kind of an obsession where, now it leads to now he's doing really, really well. I don't know his numbers, but I know that he's making substantially more money than he was in his best times with his corporate job. The second part from that episode was recognize the need to increase your value per hour. He said something, it seemed very simple at the beginning, but he recognized early on in his life that, just working for, $7.50 an hour or something seemed absurd to him. He's like, that's crazy. I'm just going to do physical labor for that much. And then he learned a skill, which was, in this case, car detailing. He says it was like a light version of that. And he then applied that skill when he was at Ave Maria University, and he was able to save the university tons of money and convince them to pay him on a per van basis to clean the vans that they used to shuttle around the football team and whatnot. So he was getting paid like $50 per van, which, worked out to like $50 an hour, which technically was the highest paid student on the campus. But it's all because he learned a skill. And this is especially going to be one for the people who are not necessarily already entrepreneurs. If you are in this such situation and you're trying to figure out what to do, you first ask yourself, what skills do I possess? What are the things that I could charge money for? And if you don't have many answers to that, then you need to get working on building some kind of skill that increases your value per hour. We could go into a lot more things beyond that, but I'm just going to leave it there. The last thing was with that episode was when you fully commit to the Lord and trust in him, he will provide. There was a time where he, after he decided to go solo, he ended up kind of getting slightly nervous about it still and ended up taking a small contract job to go with it, where he was doing some basic work and he was going to make about $600 a month doing it. It was pretty minimal, but he just felt, hey, I should do this just in case. He was kind of like hedging his bets. It got to a point where it was unsustainable and he realized, hey, I'm gonna have to send it. I'm gonna have to quit this job so I can focus on this other stuff. He quit that job, and then as soon as he got off that call, he had I think it was a DM right away from a new client, a business owner that he met with a few hours later, and that person ended up saying, "Great, would love to work on this." And at the time, the offering was $600 to work with business owners to do consultation, and he got the wire. He saw the stripe come in, and he's like, "Wow." Within minutes of me committing to this, I just made up for the entire income that would have taken me. I forget, it was like 15 hours a month or something. So again, fully trusting in the Lord, not saying that by doing this you're going to receive money, but you need to put some faith in him, right? God is always there holding us up. And if we're just constantly worried and saying, oh, I got to hedge my bets and everything, how much do you really trust in him, right? So I would definitely encourage you to take that to heart. Episode number 7 was with my good friend Zach Scardino. Him and his brother run a company called Scardino Strategic Partners, and they do a lot of different consulting with business owners who are trying to sell their business or transition their business to family. He's just a very sharp guy. I used to work with him back at the Knights of Columbus. Not directly, but we were at different agencies, but he's a great guy. So there's 3 core things that stood out from this. This episode, by the way, is really good advice for anybody who has a family business or is thinking about buying a business. Just listen to that episode. Really, really top-notch advice. Number 1 was seek expert help, because there's a lot of things that you do not know that you do not know. And do not be too proud to seek help in general. Like this should be a secret weapon of Catholic entrepreneurs, is that we should have the humility to recognize, hey, there's an area where I don't know a lot. I'm going to go seek expert help. And if you do that on an ongoing basis, you're going to, you're most likely going to succeed in anything, but you'll probably succeed even more than secular people who are trying to do it on their own, trying to prove to the world or whatever they want to that they can do this on their own. So seek help. Do not be too proud. Second piece on that one is put in the effort to be professional and good at growing your business. There's a lot of business owners who unfortunately are just kind of getting by. They're doing things. They've got a certain way about them and how they manage it, and they just let it be. Like, that's fine to them. The best business is if we're really applying ourselves, we should be professional about it. We should be trying to hone our craft, make our customer experience better. It all comes down to loving our customer. Like, if you want to have a better business, do things well. Be very professional. And again, this comes up specifically in the case of that discussion because a lot of people think that they're building a good business and they substantially overestimate the value of their business if they go to sell it. So if you want to be able to pass something on to your kids or just have valuable business to be able to sell to retire on, you're going to have to be professional. Do not assume that what you're doing right now is, the best level. Seek support. All right. Third one here is there is a huge wave of companies coming up for sale over the next, years, which will provide a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurship through acquisition. So I'm going to say the general stats are that many boomers are selling their businesses. And in fact, there are probably so many businesses being sold that many of them will go unsold. So we have an opportunity for anybody who's looking at entrepreneurship through acquisition. Definitely consider that. We've got a number of people in the community who are either doing that or who have done that. And again, Zach is a great resource for that as well. Episode number 8 was with Christopher Pereira, the founder of the Tepeyac Leadership Initiative, a program that basically helps Catholic professionals and leaders, helps Catholic professionals to become leaders in their communities. I went through his program. It just finished in, I think it was June. And it was an amazing program. Christopher is a really, really great guy. So many insights. We specifically brought him on to talk about how to engage your priest or bishop to basically be kind of an extension of his plans and his goals. And we talked about two things. Number one, we as lay people have a responsibility to go out into the world and to lead in the world. The parish is not our main place of running an apostolate. And this is reinforced by, I believe it's chapter 900 of the Catechism of the Catholic Church, that effectively states that, we must go where the missionaries and the bishops cannot go, which is, the work. It's not to say that they can't go into a kind of a work setting to evangelize, but how much time is a priest going to have to come to some person's workplace randomly and be like, hey, we're going to talk about the gospel today? Probably not going to happen, especially in today's age where we don't have enough priests. We have a specific responsibility to bring the faith into those particular areas. It says it right in the Catholic Church, or right in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. We have to become apostles to the world. And it's very tempting to want to do apostolates at the parish, but in reality, we're supposed to be involved with the parish, but we're not necessarily the ministers of the parish. Unless your job is working for the parish, maybe that's different. But the priest's job is to minister to the flock, and we are good to go out to the world and just make disciples of all nations effectively. The second piece from Christopher is that if you want to build something impactful, something real, something substantial, you need to do it full time. Building something impactful cannot be done as a hobby. Really be willing to commit. This goes back to the point with Colin. You need to be willing to commit and give God the trust and the faith that he will carry you through. Episode number 9, Jeff Scheffelbein from Undivided Life. If you do not know Jeff, you should definitely know Jeff. He's got an incredible Monday newsletter and just great LinkedIn content, amazing speaker. I had the chance to meet him at Cent Ventures last year. We'll probably see him again this year. And just very plugged into the Catholic business community. But he had two, and he runs this company called Undivided Life, which is effectively a consulting company and kind of like a holding company of multiple businesses. And check out his podcast, The Beata Dudes. It's really great. Next time I'm in Dallas, I'm hoping to get on it. The two things I got from Jeff were culture has to be at the core of the business. Oh, this comes from just secular sources, but the culture of the leadership and the ownership of the company is effectively what sets the culture for the overall business. If you want to build a Catholic organization or an organization that embodies Christian virtue, you as the founder, you as the owner, need to embody Christian values. You need to focus on virtue. So in a way, your prayer life, you attend mass, your spiritual life, everything, that should come before your business, because if you're doing it properly, that will then feed into the way your employees run things. And as we've been discussing and basically exploring on the show, when you are acting by Catholic virtue, your customers will benefit, your bottom line will benefit, everything will benefit. You want virtuous people, and that starts with you. So really, really focus on that. Culture must be the core of your business. It's not something that you bolt on. It's not a department. It has to be at the core of what your business is. Second piece there is that all of your decisions have eternal consequences. You can't just leave your faith at the door. I mean, it's the whole thing. It's the name of his business, Undivided Life. We make every decision that we make with the knowledge that these decisions have eternal consequences. I cannot recommend enough ingraining that into your head, that everything we do has eternal consequences. All right, so we're making pretty good time. 20 something minutes in, and we're on episode number 10. Episode number 10 with Taylor Ross. So Taylor Ross runs, I believe that the company is technically called Chad Dating or something, or the Chad. Anyways, he helps Catholic men. He's basically a dating coach for Catholic men, and he's got a really interesting story too. I won't tell the whole thing there. It's a really good episode, especially if you like internet businesses. Two things to learn from that one is minimize your risk and expenses so that you can become an entrepreneur. Do not overextend yourself and put yourself or your family in a precarious financial situation. We sort of mentioned this earlier, living below your means. He shared a couple examples of where he overextended himself financially and it was very challenging, or because he went to like a more expensive school than he had to, he minimized his number of opportunities because he didn't minimize his risk. He had student debt that he has to pay. So as a result, he had fewer options about what he could pursue for entrepreneurship, at least at the beginning. So minimize expenses so that you can become an entrepreneur. Do not overextend yourself. Do not have some kind of crazy inventor type ideas where it's like, I'm going to mortgage the house just to go on this one thing. Be reasonable how you go about this. You still have a family to take care of, or you will if you don't. Most of us at least will. So be reasonable with that. Second part is put prayer first, even when you're busy building your business. It's always worth it. I can't remember the exact way he articulated it, but it was very important that he realized even when things seem tough, when it seems super busy, prayer is the only way that you're going to get that calmness and that understanding of like, hey, how can I do this well? And how can I do this in basically God's time? So put prayer first, even when you're building your business, even when you're busy. Episode number 11, Chris Lewis. Chris Lewis is the guy behind Beartooth Catholic. Many of you know that brand. They've got amazing shirts, stickers, everything. They did the branding for people like Harrison Butker. Or sorry, I shouldn't say branding for him, but like they've worked with him. They worked with Trident Team Brewing. Lots of really interesting people. Lots of kind of Catholic celebrities, if you will. And three things come out from that episode is when you're growing a family business, do not force your kids to join the business. In many cases, forcing them will just result in a terrible outcome. If you make it, hey, this is something if you guys want to be involved in, more than happy to find a way to involve you. And a lot of times they like that. But if you force them, it's usually not so great. Second one is having a family business leads to a very high chance that your kids will also be interested in having businesses. He just gave the examples of his kids. I think his oldest daughter technically does work with them at Beartooth, but she also has her own. She's making her own art. She's doing her own things as well. And then his son is, if I'm not mistaken, making wooden swords or something like that as well. So they're kind of dabbling around in different things because they see what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And I personally am very passionate about this. I think that it's a very big service that we can do to our children to basically show them the love of entrepreneurship in a holy way, because otherwise it can be very difficult. The allure of the world can be very difficult for them. Teaching them how to make money, how to provide for themselves, those are really, really great skills. Number 3 there is that we need to make good art because beauty speaks to the heart. We went a lot into detail on this. I won't share too much of it here, but in general, beauty is a way that God speaks to us or touches us and gets us interested in understanding what he's all about. And as business owners, there's an episode that we'll talk about in a second. We have a responsibility to try to promote the production of good art. And that sometimes means ponying up the cash to do so. All right, episode number 12 with Monica Elling. So Monica is basically currently a consultant. She's building a liquor brand. It's a champagne brand, if I'm not mistaken, or a wine brand. And she's worked in the wine industry pretty much her whole life. She has a very interesting story. She's a super accomplished person that I had the opportunity to meet and spend some time with a few times in New York, and just super accomplished. But she also has 3 kids, and I wanted to bring her on to get the perspective of a mother of how do we how do women approach entrepreneurship as Catholics, because you have to put your vocation first before your business endeavors. And she had incredible advice for that. 3 core takeaways from that one would be, we need to always put our vocation first. Again, I just said this, but that does not mean we can't be building businesses. In some ways, it's actually good for us. So order things properly, put your family first, but that doesn't prevent you from building a business. All right. Next thing would be, look at your current problem set for business opportunities. She gave a bunch of business ideas on the podcast, and usually they stem from hey, what's the current problems or challenges that I'm facing? And then you can use that as an opportunity to validate it and see if it works for other people. And then the final thing is she's very passionate about this, and as am I, that we need to build a network of funding opportunities or funding mechanisms for the Catholic business community, because I think that a lot of our morals do not quite fit into the standard finance mechanisms that are out there. Yes, they can fit inside that, but they have to look different. Structurally, they don't have to look different, but how they're executed, I would say, or how they're administered has to be different. Like, we're not private equity coming in here willing to lay off 15% of the workforce just to make an increase in ROI so we can sell the business in 3 years. Like, that's not okay. Yeah. And then VC, like, we don't want to build businesses that are going to also, hey, we've got a product that's great for Catholic community, but also, hey, let's go sell this to some other communities that might be I don't know, either super against the morals of the faith, or maybe it's promoting something completely wrong. We don't want to do that. So we need our own funding mechanisms. I guess I think I'm probably going to end up ending this after this to do it part 2. So it looks like we did end up hitting part 2. But episode number 13, Rob Kazmark, or as I like to call him, he will be the Catholic Disney. Rob Kazmark is the owner of Spirit Juice Studios. A lot of you have probably heard of their work. They have an incredible reach. I don't even know how big the business is, but it's pretty big. They've done work with Ascension Press, Knights of Columbus, Bishop Barron, a lot of incredible people. They have a huge YouTube channel for kids too. This episode was amazing. So Rob is based out of Chicago. Rob, there's 4 things that I would cover from this one. It's okay to lean into your role as a leader in a business. God put you there for a reason, so don't be afraid of it. Own it. It took him time to realize that he could call himself CEO, or he could own the role, and his employees eventually kind of convinced him to do that. So that one's a really, really important one. The next thing is to grow for you personally or for your team. There needs to be failure involved effectively. If you're constantly checking the work of your employees, they're never going to feel like they have to give their best work because they know you'll check the work. But if there's opportunity for them to fail, then they realize, oof, like that's rough. I'm going to fix that. And this is kind of like how it is in the spiritual life. God oftentimes lets us fail so that we can learn and get back up again and trust him again, and ideally come closer to him. So the third one is, when you are thinking about giving up, business is hard sometimes. Ask yourself if you'd rather be doing something else. If there's anything else you'd rather be doing. If the answer is no, probably should keep doing what you're doing. He had a couple times where it was really tough, and he's like, man, what would I do? Would I rather be doing anything else? And he could not think of anything else he'd rather be doing. He really enjoyed the work. I think this goes to show that we oftentimes get complacent, and we're dissatisfied suddenly by what we have, even though it's the thing we pursued so long. And we just need a little bit of perspective to remember that. I think it's something I run into all the time. It's like, Nathan Crankfield had a great post about this just recently, where it's like, I forget exactly how he worded it, but it's like, I'm only upset when I lose sight of what I have in front of me. And then he had a great picture of his family. And it's the same thing for me too. It's like, I can be frustrated and annoyed, but if I realize, hey, listen, I have everything I've really ever wanted. I can pay the bills. I run my own business. I have a wife. I have a daughter. This is always what I wanted. So I'm going to be grateful for that. And I think we all have to make sure that is a kind of a consideration that we have. Fourth thing, sometimes it's important to share your vision publicly with others outside of your company, basically to get where you want to go. Because by sharing it, it will help others know how to help you. Many people are going to judge you for it. They're going to say that you're too ambitious or brash or whatever, but that doesn't matter. It's important to set some kind of vision, because it helps it become a reality through people knowing how they can help, but also it shows us that we can be ambitious. Like, God, think about it this way. God made the earth, right? That's obviously he's God, but that's pretty impressive. Like, that's pretty ambitious. I don't know how you would kind of square that exactly, but what's stopping us, who are creatures who are created in the image and likeness of God, from being involved in some way like that? We are going to take a pause here, and we're going to make this into 2 parts. I think we're roughly halfway through. The second part might be a little bit longer because there's a few more points on them. But thank you guys for tuning into this. I will be putting episode 2 out very shortly afterwards, so it's not like these are going to be separated that much, but I'm going to break it up into 2 parts, so it's a little bit more digestible for you. A really quick shout out again, if you're a founder, if you're a Catholic entrepreneur, thinking about buying a business, building a business, whatever. If you're a Catholic entrepreneur and you want to surround yourself with other great people, consider joining the Catholic Founders Guild. It's $10 a month or $100 a year, and we have some incredible people in there. We're growing at a pretty good rate right now. I think we've got like 35 or 36 members now, and we're meeting on a monthly basis to discuss different challenges in our business, talking about different topics. We have experts come in from different spaces. We'll have somebody come on pretty soon to talk about what tax changes we have to be worried about with the OBBB bill that came through, otherwise known as the Big Beautiful Bill. There's a lot of value in there. And I think for me, the coolest thing is seeing all these other Catholic business owners do business with each other. We've got a directory there, so if you need resources, you know who to reach out to, and they're trusted. Like these people, I vet every single person that comes into the community. So there's no crazies, right? At least not to my knowledge. Everybody's great. Everybody's solid. So if you're interested in that, go to our Substack and just upgrade to paid, and then fill out the application form, and we'll get you in after we meet, of course. Yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Stay tuned for part 2, I should say, of episode 26. Cheers.